Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 971. My opponent started off with e4, and I played d5. I played this in the previous game, but I was still trying to get a true Scandinavian. In the other game, my opponent pushed on with e5. But here he took, so we get a real Scandinavian. And not only that, but after knight f6, he plays c4, and allows me to play the Scandinavian gambit with c6. So I think this is just good for black. And if you're the kind of player who's afraid of playing down a pawn, this is a good opening for you because it'll give you practice at playing down a pawn and playing for compensation in a position that you know is pretty good. So anyway, he falls into my plan by taking the pawn. There is another gambit here too, the e6 gambit. I've just never played it. I think that's called the Norwegian gambit or the Icelandic gambit, something like that. But c6, the Scandinavian gambit, is also a good gambit. It's probably better than e6, actually, according to the chess engine anyway. So, but white doesn't have to take here. An interesting move here is d4. And after I take, we've actually transposed, and this is the Panov-Botvinnik attack against the Caro-Kann defense, and it's okay for white. So that's one way to play. Or knight c3. And then taking is the normal move, and then once again d4 would lead to the Panov-Botvinnik attack against the Caro-Kann, but white can also play with c takes d5. This will lead to unique positions, and this develop here. And this is okay for white as well. It looks a bit funny with this isolated and backwards at the moment queen pawn, but the pawn will come forward. And white's development is okay here, so there's nothing to be feared in this position. But I think the way my opponent played here, where he actually takes the pawn, is a slight mistake. And let's see, played knight f3 and went with e5. So we followed the standard moves so far, and at this position, if you look at it with the chess engine, it seems like black is slightly better, which is a considerable thing, especially considering black is a pawn down. So it's just good for black. Anyway, he went d3 here, the normal move, and I played bishop c5. This is a move I always play here, but I think maybe I'll try something different for a variety. It's still good. I don't know why they give it a question mark there. It's just not maybe as strong as the other moves. I mean, I'm deliberately avoiding this e4 move, but you can play this, and this maybe gives black the biggest edge. Play e4 right away, he takes, trade queens. That's why I don't play it. He just gives up the queen so soon, I don't enjoy it as much. But then you take the pawn. Well, you're still a pawn down. White has 3 pawns against 2 over here, so you're just getting the pawn back. But you're threatening the fork on f2 there. White defends, and then you just develop here. And the line continues from here, but this is, you're already threatening to castle queenside with check. You have a tremendous amount of development here, player, and white is never going to be able to castle here. His king is going to be in the center for a while, so should be good fun even with the just the minor pieces. So it's probably worth considering sometime. Another way to play this, if you don't want to go for the immediate queen trade, and I think this is what I'll try next time. So go with the bishop f5 here, put pressure on that d3 pawn, say he brings his knight out, and then from here you can either pin the knight, or once again you can push on with e4. So this e4 idea, this is often an idea in this structure. You're just going after the backwards pawn in the pawn chain, and things can fall apart in the center. So it's something, even if you don't play e4 right away, it's something you should keep in mind as you play. Okay, so anyway, in the game, after he played d3, I went bishop to c5, and then he went h3, and we're just out of the opening book. Normal here would be bishop e2 and castle, and just keep developing, and still a good position for black. But he went h3, and h3 actually is losing according to the chess engine. I guess it's just too slow in this position. Things are kind of critical here, and he's taking a moment out to play a defensive move like h3, which only defends against the pin. It doesn't really defend a whole lot. Well, once again, e4 is given as a really strong move here. But another way to take this is to play queen b6 and just take advantage of the fact that this pawn is under defended and he can't castle because he hasn't developed his bishop. See, if he'd played bishop e2 instead of playing h3, then he could have castled in this position. So that's one reason why h3 was a bad move. And the chess engine thinks the best move here is to give the pawn back this way, which is looks like this is pretty good for black. you can check over here too. If he blocks with the queen, you don't have to trade. And then, well, if the queen comes back to block, you can grab this pawn, threatening the rook in the corner, so the king has to move. And this looks like a tremendous position for black with the knight coming in here. And this knight pinned. Looks pretty good. Although apparently not entirely winning, but you know, big advantage, at least for black. So so if instead of bishop e3, where I just win the pawn back and get that attack going, he could play queen d2 to try and defend the pawn this way. And now e4 is a good move. Always keep that idea in mind, pushing on with e4. If he takes, the knight comes in and things just fall apart. The knight hits the queen and f2 again, so he actually can't even take that pawn. He has to move his knight, and then you can develop the bishop, keep more pressure here, prepare to castle queenside maybe, or maybe just play rook to d1 and castle kingside. Anyway, things look like they're going to fall apart for white here very quickly. So that was the best way to respond to this h3 move. Either push on immediately with e4 or play queen b6 first and then follow up. So depending on how white responds. Anyway, I just played a developing move here, not taking advantage of the position. He went bishop g5 here, and there's a cute tactic here if you want to put on your tactics hat. See if you can spot the tactic for black. What should black play here? Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. It's a pretty common idea here, so hopefully you guys spotted it, but if you haven't, go ahead and pause the video and think about it some. Anyway, the answer is bishop takes f2 check, and well, the king doesn't want to walk away, but if he takes, then this is a check. And if he takes the knight, this is why maybe it wasn't so easy to spot. The queen is hanging there, so that's one idea. And if he moves the king, then you can take here with the knight, get the knight out of trouble, and just win the piece on g5 while having chased the king around. So that's, and won a pawn on f2. So that is a good tactic. Anyway, I didn't play that. I played h6, kicking the bishop. He dropped back. I castled. The chess engine actually wanted me to play g5 right away. We'll take a look at that in a move or in another move, yeah, on move 10. But it could have been played here. Let's see. He went bishop e2. I went queen d6. Yeah, it didn't like queen d6, and in fact, it thinks that I'm giving up my advantage at this point, and it turns into kind of an even game. So g5 though, g5, you know, that's a move you always have to think about before playing. But if he just drops back and you push on with e4, he still hasn't castled, and you're fairly safe over here. He is not going to have time to exploit the pawn weaknesses, but he could make things interesting by sacrificing here. This was given actually as the best response by the chess engine, although it still thinks that black should win here once again after this e4 move. And I guess in this case, if you can arrange a queen trade, then you'll be a piece up. So that is, if you do the queen trade with tempo, you have time to protect the knight or move it away, and you'll be a piece up. And so that should be winning as well. Anyway, couple of ideas, all based around g5, depending on whether he sacrifices there or not, give a winning edge to black. But after queen d6, it's not at all clear. In fact, it goes back and forth in the evaluation. White has time to castle here. Let's see, I bring my knight into b4. I'm just focusing on this weakness here. He plays knight e1. So I was feeling pretty good about this, but I think he had some better moves along there. But I didn't want to. The chess evaluation was kind of swinging back and forth on every move, and I didn't want to spend my time discussing every possible variation. So these moves seem reasonable, I guess. I'm just piling up on that d pawn. And let's see, he decides to slow things down by taking my knight off. And here was an interesting point. I decided to take with the g pawn, and instead of taking with the queen, which I knew I could take with the queen, I considered that, but I thought it would be more fun to keep the pressure on the center. But the chess engine actually says the correct move was to keep my king side together and take with the queen. And in this position, I still have an edge in development, and I have the bishop pair. So, so this is good for black. Let's see. But you know, when you weaken your king side like this, you always give your opponent some counter chances. Let's see. He played a3, resolving the situation here, and then I took. And here he had a chance to even things out just by exchanging everything off. So there's a couple lines here. He could take, I'll take back. He can take again, I'll take back. And then he could just play knight c3, developing and asking me if I want to trade queens or get the c pawn here. Let's see, what's the material? Now actually black is a pawn up and has a bishop versus a knight. But there is this weakness over here on the king side. My extra pawn is not that impressive. And this is still playable for white, so that's one way to go. Another way white could have played this is you first start with the exchanges, and then go ahead and keep exchanging, exchange queens, and then develop the knight. Actually, in this case, with the queens off, my extra pawn is worth a little bit more, so this is slightly better for black. The other line with the queens on is close to even. Anyway, let's go back to the game. He played neither of those moves. I mean, he played a move that seems logical at first blush. He's kicking my bishop with b4, and also when I brought the knight in here, I was threatening to take on b2. So he saves his b pawn, hits one of my pawns. But, well, one problem is it opens up this diagonal, and so the move bishop to d4, which I played, was one of the top two moves in the suggested by the by Stockfish, but and it's just completely winning for black at this point. It gives black like a 5-point edge here. The funny thing is, even the move knight to f4, this was the second move. This also is just completely winning for black. It's not clear why at first glance, but he's going to lose a piece here, even though my piece is hanging. So if he takes, I take, he takes back, I take. So I get my piece back, and the material, you know, it's two minor pieces and two rooks against two minor pieces and two rooks, but the AI is still giving a plus 5 edge to black here. I guess there's no good way to save this knight, is there? The knight is under fire, and it's pinned against the rook, which is loose in the corner. So probably that's the reason why that line is equally good. Anyway, got to calculate to figure things like that out. And well, bishop d4 was just a good move as well, hitting his rook. Let's see, he played c5, hitting my queen. I stepped back. He got his rook out of trouble, and then I took on f2. And the AI is approving of the chess engine, rather, I mean, is approving of all of these moves. Let's see, his queen is under fire. I was trying to set up a discovered check here, like if rook takes, bishop takes, rook with check, and then I'll win a pawn again on d1 there, like I showed previously. So gets his queen out of trouble, puts the queen over here on b3, and then I just drop my knight back with a check. I thought this was good enough, but the best move here, the continuation, the engine wants to play is knight takes h3. Just wins another pawn. Let's see, after king h1, I can bring my knight back with check, or king f2. I can bring my knight to, well, in either case, I can bring my knight back to f2 so it doesn't land in any trouble there, and I've just gained another pawn and weakened his king side, so this continues to be good for me. I was a little bit worried about this bishop becoming loose, I guess. But at the moment, my queen is defending it, so not a problem. So anyway, I brought my knight back with e4 check. He went king h2, and then I dropped my bishop back to e6. Yeah, I also saw this skewer, and I thought I would just take advantage of that. So he played queen f3. I took his rook, and then he resigned. So this is not a position I would have resigned in, actually, as white. So let's go ahead and look ahead at some of the things that could go on here. He can take the knight. The knight was just hanging there, so he wasn't down a rook. And I do have to worry a little bit. You know, I mean, the queen, yeah, I can't just take another piece. The queen is defending the knight there at first. Maybe he thought I was threatening to take another piece there, but it's just, I'm just down the exchange here. I mean, I'm just up the exchange here. White is down the exchange. But he has attacking ideas here, so I have to tread carefully. King g7 is the AI suggestion, the chess engine suggestion. He goes bishop d3, threatening to come into the corner. And the defensive move the chess engine wants to play is f5. I don't know if I would have thought of this move. And, you know, he might have had some fun there, chasing me around, maybe even bringing his king up, his rook up and over to hit my king this way. Could get dangerous in a hurry if I make a couple of imprecise moves. Anyway, if he takes with the queen here, I'll just trade out, and my material advantage will come through. You won't have an attack in it there anymore. So he takes with the rook. And then, well, I bring the bishop back, hitting the rook. And at first, I wondered if he could sacrifice here, but after I take, you know, his queen can come in and get a check, but my king can just walk out. So turns out there's no good follow-up. His knights are on the back row, and he's given up his rook, so he doesn't have enough force to complete the attack there if he sacrifices the rook. So, but he can play with queen g4 check, setting up one more trap. If I go king h7, there's a mate in two there because rook takes f7 is a discovered check. But if you notice that and you play king h8, then you're still going to be able to win here. Say queen to f5, and now I can grab the bishop. He can take back, hitting my queen, but the queen can defend on the third rank, and White's attack has finally run its course, and now it's a good time to resign. But it would have been an interesting couple of moments there to see if you know, if I had White, I would have definitely tried the attack and see how it turned out. Anyway, let's go back to the game. Let's see, after this move, he went queen f3, I took the rook, and he resigned in this position. Interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.